All right, today we're going to start talking about photosynthesis. The key things with photosynthesis is we are building glucose. Remember, glucose is a carbohydrate. It is the primary source of energy, quick energy for the cell. And photosynthesis is complementary to cellular respiration, meaning what photosynthesis produces is what respiration needs, and vice versa. The products of photosynthesis are the reactants of cellular respiration. So, the big essential question for this small mini unit is going to be, how is energy transformed? Key word there, transformed. How is energy transformed into a different type? Remember, the law of conservation of energy says that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It simply becomes a different form. So our photosynthesis equation, it's important that we know this equation. We are dealing with, first off, carbon dioxide and water are two of our biggest reactants. In addition, we need an energy, and that energy is sunlight. We have two major products. The whole point of photosynthesis is to make glucose. And then a waste product of photosynthesis is oxygen. Now, what we will see, in order to maintain the law of conservation of matter, matter cannot be created or destroyed, you will see these coefficients just to make sure that all atoms are accounted for in the reaction. And remember, this is a synthesis reaction since we are building up glucose. And for synthesis, it is also considered anabolic. Now, two quick questions, true or false? Plants can undergo photosynthesis and will not experience cellular respiration. Here is our key phrase here. This is absolutely false. This is probably one of the biggest misconceptions within this unit. Plants are going to make the sugar and then they're going to break it down. So they go through both processes. We only go through one since we cannot photosynthesize. So we need to consume either plants or animals that ate plants to get those sugars. And the second question, the chloroplast is the only organelle to undergo chemical reactions. This is also false. Reason being is the word the only organelle. So we also have, remember, the mitochondria. And the mitochondria is where respiration takes place. So plants will undergo photosynthesis and respiration to kind of make that a true statement. So once again, our equation, water and carbon dioxide, is needed as well as sunlight to make glucose and oxygen. So a very basic definition is we are trapping energy. Chlorophyll is a pigment in the chloroplast. That is what is going to catch sunlight. And the key word is you are converting carbon dioxide, water to our simple sugars, where glucose is a monosaccharide, that store energy. So our big energy transformation is we are going from light energy to chemical energy in the form of your chemical bonds. So that is stored energy. That's the big picture with photosynthesis. We are taking sunlight and making it into basically a usable energy. So just another way of looking at things, we have 3 reactants, we have 2 products. This is a waste product. Even though we need it, it is a waste. This is the sole purpose of photosynthesis, because we are going to have stored energy in the form of your bonds. So where does it occur? The chloroplast, which this is plant cell only. Animal cells do not have this, which is why animal cells do not photosynthesize. And taking a look at a chloroplast again, remember it is 2 different membranes, going back to that endosymbiotic theory. We have a stroma, which is almost like its own cytoplasm. You have these stacks called the granum or the grana. And then you have these individual discs. And those individual discs are called the thylakoids. And the thylakoid is where the chlorophyll is, where the pigments are. So sunlight is going to where the stacks are. That'll be important here in a couple minutes. So why are plants green? Because light is made up of many different wavelengths. Remember the whole Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. We have our larger wavelengths starting at red. We have our shorter wavelengths at violet. But with a shorter wavelength comes more frequency. We can see more wavelengths across the same interval of violet than we do red. Greater frequency leads to greater energy. So our pigments are going to be specific to different wavelengths of light. And we have 2 different types of chlorophyll that will attract 2 different types of light. So the reason why plants are green is because of chlorophyll. The primary pigment is going to show, and not all plants are green, but whatever color they are, that's the pigment that is kind of overshadowing all of the others. And the pigment is reflecting the wavelength that the color shows. So chlorophyll is green because it reflects green. So let's just deal with that for a second. So just quick review before we move on. It is absorbing the biggest wavelength, which is red, and one of the smaller ones. Hence the need for 2 different chlorophylls. And then it is going to reflect green. And this is why plants are green, because of the reflection. So we have 2 completely different wavelengths of light being accepted by the chlorophyll. Just as we kind of introduced in class, we have 2 different reactions that make up that general equation. Yes, we have 3 reactants, we have 2 products, but those are going to be split up into 2 smaller reactions. The light-dependent which is also known as simply the light reaction. Or the light independent, which is also known as the Calvin cycle. Now, sometimes you'll also hear this referred to as the dark reaction, just because sunlight does not take place in this one. It doesn't occur in the dark, it's just that sunlight is not part of it. So remember, our big idea is that energy transformation of light to chemical. And remember, that chemical is in the form of your bonds. So in looking at the light reaction, essentially what we have here is our energy transformation. We have sunlight to chemical. And essentially, the chemical energy is in the form of ATP, as well as another energy carrier called NADPH. This is in the thylakoid, where that chlorophyll is. The whole point of your light reaction, your light-dependent reaction. So you'll hear this referred to as essentially the LDR is it needs to essentially pay for the light independent reaction. What I mean by that is there is an energy cost. So the first reaction makes sure that there's enough energy to drive the second reaction. So the light-dependent reaction is all about making sure that we have ATP and NADPH to help make sure that the second reaction happens. Remember, you need enough energy to drive a reaction from the start. The second thing with this reaction is we are dealing with sunlight and water. And essentially, what we are creating is oxygen. So we're getting rid of oxygen. So in this reaction, H2O is being split apart to its ionic form as well as O2. As we see over here, O2 is released as a waste. To make our energy, we need to form ATP. So we're going to have, ADP plus a phosphate is going to give us ATP over here. We also have what's called NADP plus. That's going to add a hydrogen, and that's how we get NADPH. That is going to be added to our low energy molecule. Much like ADP, NADPH also has a similar lower energy. So the whole big part is sunlight is going to help split apart water, and now we're going to build up our energy molecules. So the key thing, build up ATP and NADPH. That is the biggest thing with your light-independent reaction. The reaction where light is a necessary thing. So, kind of step by step. Chlorophyll absorbing the energy from the sunlight. So we see that right here. Step one. The energy is transferred along the thylakoid membrane. So we kind of see that kind of entering right there. Water molecules are broken down. So remember, our water molecules are going from O2 and kind of becoming an ion form. Oxygen molecules are released as a waste. So that is released. And that is going to be step 4. Energy that is carried along the thylakoid membrane is transferred to a higher energy. So what we see here is ADP is going to add a phosphate to become ATP. That's going to be part of step 5. And NADP plus our H, which we have right here, is going to form NADPH. So the biggest things that we are getting from the light-independent reaction is energy. Oxygen is a waste product. The only thing we have left right now is energy. That's it. And then to make ATP, remember we have an enzyme to help us do that. And that enzyme is called ATP synthase. The ASE for an enzyme, remember synthesis is like build. So building up ATP, getting 2 high energy molecules ready to power the second reaction. So we see ATP synthase right there. It is an enzyme. Remember, enzymes are proteins. Simply adding a phosphate to ATP. Remember, ATP has 3 phosphates. ADP has 1, so we're getting that 3rd phosphate. Once again, NADPH, similar to kind of ADP and ATP. We have low energy, high energy form. And this is kind of, once again, our big thing. Transferring energy to the Calvin cycle, which is the light-independent reaction. Making sure there's energy available for the next step. So real quick, light-dependent review, also known as the light reaction, or the LDR. We have our sunlight come in. We have our water, our 6 molecules of water that are being broken up into H's and O's. The O's are being lost as a waste. The H's are adding to NADP plus to form NADPH. We also have ADP adding a phosphate to form ATP with the help of ATP synthase. And in the end, we have 2 energy molecules that will be transferred to help cover the energy cost of step 2. All this in the chloroplast, all this within the thylakoid, and the grana, the thylakoid, remember, is 1 disc. The grana is the entire stack. So, just with this, our reactants, sunlight and water, and then we have our low energy forms. This is creating our waste product, which is oxygen, and then our high energy forms. So really the only thing that is staying within the chloroplast, moving on to the next part, is our 2 energy molecules happening in the thylakoid, in those green discs where the chlorophyll is at. So final thing for today, which of the following is not a product of the light dependent? Dependent means needs. The dependent reaction. Remember, we're dealing with sunlight because that is dependent. We're dealing with water, and we're dealing with oxygen. Those are the things from the main equation. Now, kind of what's behind the scenes is we also have ADP and we have NADP+. Those are our low energy forms. So that's going to end up making ATP and NADPH. This is going to be released, and these two are going on to the next step. So the light dependent reaction, first step on helping to eventually create or form sugar. Step 2 is going to be forming the sugar. Step 1 is just making sure we have the energy to power that process. Because everything comes at a cost. So step 1, make the energy. Step 2, make the sugar. All right, that is all for the light dependent reaction. Getting into photosynthesis. If you have any questions, please ask. Thanks for watching.